Cover One, the Draft Podcast. Welcome back. I'm Russell Brown, riding solo for a Sunday episode, and it's something different that I've wanted to start doing, and I'm super excited to start doing. I'm going to start calling it Scenario Sunday with you guys. It'll be 10, 15 minutes, something pretty quick, but it's going to be fun, and it's going to be surrounded around the NFL draft and specific teams in the NFL with specific players from college football and for obviously players in this upcoming 2021 NFL draft. So some quick hitters, obviously Trevor Lawrence testing positive for COVID-19. Where does this affect the situation next week against Notre Dame, Clemson, Notre Dame? We'll see. Christian Page and I will definitely highlight that game next week. We'll have more information on if Trevor Lawrence is going to play or not, but obviously COVID-19, how does it affect Trevor Lawrence and his potential decision of going back to Clemson? Could that very well change his decision-making? We don't know, but that's scenario one for this first ever episode of this type of episode of the podcast. So I look at it, and we've often talked about Trevor Lawrence being the number one pick of the 2021 NFL Draft. And recently, there's been a situation coming out of Trevor Lawrence going back to Clemson if the Jets have the number one pick of the draft. And I can't blame him if he chose to go back if the Jets were the number one pick. I mean, the Jets are a dumpster fire, but he needs to understand, and I think we all need to understand as fans of the NFL, of fans in just college football, and of the draft, we have to understand that he is going to be going to a New York Jets team in an organization that doesn't have Adam Gase anymore. There's no way. I mean, there's a way, but there's no possible way that Adam Gase is still the head coach of the New York Jets next season. So that leaves me to believe that Joe Douglas could very well be on his way out. And if Joe Douglas isn't gone, I don't think that necessarily matters or not. I don't think Joe Douglas is great by any means as the general manager, but no matter what, Trevor Lawrence should be playing with a new head coach next year in New York. And the New York Jets make the most sense. Now, obviously, I think regardless of the COVID-19 stuff, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to finish out the year. And I think this is just more for him to say, hey, you know what? We are so uncertain on what's going on in the world. I've already gotten COVID-19. I'm not going to take that risk again. I'm not going to bet on myself and the New York Jets. I'll suffer through. I'll figure it out. I could be the savior for this franchise and organization, and that would be great. I mean, he would be a legend in New York if that was the case. So I think Trevor Lawrence is still going to go pro regardless of everything, and I do think the New York Jets are going to be the first pick of the draft. At this point, halfway through the year, they've shown nothing. They have shown absolutely nothing. LaMichael Pirine looks decent as a nice complement into the backfield. Jamison Crowder does his thing, but it just certainly seems like this organization has given up on Sam Darnold, and I don't think they've necessarily really given him a chance to succeed as you look at this team. So the first scenario is obviously, would Trevor Lawrence go pro? Yes, I think he is, but now it's what team is he going to go to? And the scenario would be, in my opinion, the first and second pick of the draft. The New York Jets should be picking first. The New York Giants could very well be picking second. And when you get to that situation, let's just hypothetically say the New York Jets pass. They pass on Trevor Lawrence, and they continue to build around Sam Darnold somehow. Do the New York Giants take Trevor Lawrence? That's the question. Would one of the New York teams get Trevor Lawrence this year? And I think the answer is very simple. Yes. I know the Giants just drafted Daniel Jones, much like the Jets just drafted Sam Darnold not too long ago, just a few years ago. But at this point in time, either organization would benefit with Trevor Lawrence running their offense and being the face of their franchise. So it doesn't matter if it's the Giants or the Jets, whoever's picking first or second. If they get an opportunity to get Trevor Lawrence, you have to take him. And I say this in the oddest light of the potential chance that possibly a team picking first this year could very well be in the need of an offensive tackle. And that team, let's just hypothetically say it's Cincinnati. They wouldn't take Trevor Lawrence the year after taking Joe Burrow. After everything that Joe Burrow has shown, at the point of going into this week, Joe Burrow led the league in pass attempts at 293. He was third in the NFL in passing yards, just over 2,000. He's one of only 4 quarterbacks in the NFL going into this week with over 2,000 yards. He's developed early chemistry with Tyler Boyd. He's looking towards T. Higgins down the field all the time. He's got A.J. Green coming alive and coming back to life. So I think the Bengals make complete sense to continue to build around Joe Burrow, obviously. And I've often said Trevor Lawrence is quite possibly the best quarterback we've seen, obviously, since Joe Burrow, but also Andrew Luck. I mean, I think when you look at these 3 players, these are like, without a doubt, the best players in their draft, the best quarterbacks in those drafts, and guys that you can build a franchise around. Obviously, Andrew Luck, he couldn't stay healthy, and those things happen, and he retired. But you have Joe Burrow showing so much promise in year 1. When you're the Giants, when you're the Jets, if there's that oddest slight that the Bengals get the first pick somehow, and they take Penei Sewell out of Oregon, then the Jets or the Giants, whoever's picking second. I still believe it's going to be the Jets at 1, and I still believe it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. But that scenario would have to come into play of which one of those teams is going to take Trevor Lawrence. And I guess the other scenario, the last scenario of all of this, would be if the Jets do get the first pick, or the Giants get the first pick, is there a king's ransom for that top pick? And even if it is the Bengals, let's say, is there a king's ransom that an organization could get for giving up the first pick so a team could get and draft Trevor Lawrence? I think the answer is simple. Yes, there is a king's ransom because it's Trevor Lawrence. This guy is fantastic. He does all the little things right. He seems like a great guy off the field. He seems like an even better guy on the field. So what would it be? What would be that ransom? And I think that ransom is something in regards to, I mean, you'd have to consider 2, 3 first-round picks, right? I mean, probably 2 first-round picks. You'd get this year, you'd get next year, a possible pick the following year, and you throw in those second and third round picks, it all adds up to be pretty solid. Maybe there's a player involved in the mix. I don't know. I don't know if a team would be willing to dump some cap space, and I don't know if a team would be willing to take on some cap space in a move like that. But when you look at years past, I mean, you saw what the Rams did with getting Jared Goff, and you see what teams do with moving up in the draft to get a specific player. It happens, and this could be one of those years where it happens. Now, me personally, I think the one scenario that makes the most sense is just the Jets having the first pick and the Jets taking Trevor Lawrence. But again, this is the Jets. This is a team, an organization that they fall on their face all the time, and they swing and they miss often. And the last few years, especially at quarterback, it's been a swing and a miss. And I still like Sam Darnold quite a bit. I think there's going to be an organization out there that if they can't get their hands on a quarterback, they should be calling the Jets on Sam Darnold and saying, hey, we need this guy. I mean, if you look at Atlanta, if they somehow move on from Matt Ryan, which I don't know if that happens, but if they move on from Matt Ryan, you're on the phone, you're trying to get Sam Darnold. If you're the Detroit Lions, you're on the phone, you're probably trying to get Sam Darnold. Nothing against Matthew Stafford. He's playing great. We'll see how the rest of the year plays out. But you could potentially get this guy in here, spend a year behind Stafford, and you have a potential quarterback for the future beyond Matthew Stafford because Stafford's back injuries. Is he going to get another contract because his contract's coming to a close after 2021? So is there a potential season of Sam Darnold on the bench? Yeah, there is that. I mean, then you look at Jacksonville. Does Jacksonville play into the mix of Trevor Lawrence? Probably not. But what about Justin Fields for Jacksonville? Is he there? So there's quite a few scenarios, but Sam Darnold would be one of those guys that makes a lot of sense for Jacksonville. So I think there's certainly teams across the board. The Indianapolis Colts, another one. Phillip Rivers, a 1-year rental. I know you've got Jacob Eason, but if you don't like his development right now, is Sam Darnold a guy that you try to bring in? So there's a lot of different situations and a lot of different scenarios there, but the one that makes the most sense, again, with all of this, is the Jets going in a different direction at quarterback and getting Trevor Lawrence. That's the one that makes the most sense to me. So I don't know exactly where everybody's at on this Trevor Lawrence to the NFL thing. Is it a sure thing he's number one? I think so. Is it the Jets? I think so. But what would be the other scenario? I mean, like I've mentioned, there's the trade. There's a possibility that it's the Giants picking first. There's a possibility it's the Jaguars. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But there is that possibility, that situation of the Bengals picking first as well. I mean, you never know. Maybe the Jets get hot. Maybe they win 4 or 5 games. Maybe the Giants do as well. And maybe the Bengals just sit around 3 wins on the year, 4 wins on the year. So I don't know how it's all going to play out. I really don't. I like going over scenarios. I love doing it, especially because it's easier talking it out rather than doing a whole mock draft and then doing another mock draft and doing another mock draft. But when I look at this, I just think, what team could it be for Trevor Lawrence? And I just think it's a New York team. I think it's a Giants franchise that, no matter how much they like Daniel Jones, if they get the option to go after a Trevor Lawrence, you have to do it. And the ball security issues are the biggest concern with Daniel Jones, and just really the development of him. He's not exactly the quarterback that he needs to be right now. Could it all click in year 3? Absolutely. It's hard to believe that they would pass on a Daniel Jones, but at the same time, again, we're talking about a potential once in a franchise altering situation of getting a quarterback that changes it all. And I think either New York organization, from the Jets to the Giants, they would be stupid not to take Trevor Lawrence or try their best to get him on their franchise. So we will obviously see. It's months away. We're going to do this every single Sunday. We're talking 10 to 15 minutes of your time going through scenarios. I'd love to get your comments on my Twitter page, @RussNFLDraft. I'm going to drop this. It's going to be on Spreaker. It's going to be on iTunes. It's going to be on Spotify, YouTube. Wherever you listen to your podcast, be sure to put us into the mix. This is Scenario Sunday on the Cover One Draft Podcast. I would love to get your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence potentially being the number 1 pick, and the scenarios of what teams make the most sense. It's got to be the Jets, right? But if it's not the Jets picking first, who could it be, and why does it make sense for Trevor Lawrence? I'd love to get your thoughts. Find me on Twitter again, @RussNFLDraft. Smash the follow button. So that's this week of Scenario Sunday. We'll do it again next week after the games finish. Again, that's right here on Cover One, the Draft Podcast.